power on.
Science. Outer space. Psychology. Book and movie recommendations. Fiction from the Sovryn universe. Travels to points of mystery and the unexplained. And even spirituality? All of that can only mean one thing. The Sovryn Technica Newsletter! By me, Ellen Sovryn, along with some stuff by that crazy man I call my husband, Dr. Brian Sovryn. It's the latest tool in your self-directed education. The education that really matters. If you want to cut through the crap of mainstream media ass clowns, sign up for the Sovryn Technica newsletter right now at sovryn.substack.com. That's sovryn.substack.com. The Sovryn Technica newsletter. Welcome to the future.
I don't think that the concept of human intelligence is meaningful or well-defined. And when we try to apply it in a kind of mechanistic way to electronic devices, that's not meaningful either.
It's kind of what Jeff Hawkins is trying to do with Numenta. We've interviewed Jeff on this show about his book On Intelligence, which is a great read. He says, well, if you're going to make an intelligent machine, you can't make it in a kind of von Neumann architecture. You have to do something that is much more massively parallel, like our own mind. But yet that implies that we somehow understand how we are intelligent and how it works, and we can apply that to a machine, all of which seems, from what you've just said, far-fetched.
Well, it is. Now, Jeff is one of the very few people who I think can make a legitimate claim to saying he's doing what you might call biologically inspired computing.
Right.
Because he is literally trying to understand, by analyzing our brains, what the actual neurological processes are. And then he's simulating those in a machine, hoping that by building networks of these things, they will be able to solve similar kinds of problems to those you can do with your, I think, prefrontal cortex, which are kind of your reasoning and pattern recognition centers. Now, that doesn't mean he's building a human being. It's not something that gets hungry at night or falls in love. That's not what Jeff would say, and not really where he's going. But if anybody has a right to use a term like artificial intelligence, I think that Jeff is probably at the top of the heap.
Yeah.
The rest of this stuff is really engineering practice. So, Leo, if I could come back to something that you said, sometimes I feel like the atheist at an evangelical convention. If I walked in there and said,
"This is the new spirituality, isn't it?"
Exactly. There is no God, and Jesus Christ was a man. They'd say, "Well, thank you very much. That's very nice. Go home.
Go by.
So, yeah. So you don't get a lot of attention for claiming that the emperor has no clothes. Those who want to talk about this is all very spiritual and we're building godlike machines and we'll be able to upload ourselves. I don't even know what the hell that means into a machine.
Yeah.
Good. We'll call it Grandpa in a can is what I call this in my book. You'll go, hey, Grandpa's on the mantelpiece. Let's go ask Grandpa a question. Well, Grandpa's not going to be taking you out for ice cream. And if it did, it's just some kind of weird mechanical device. It's not Grandpa. Grandpa's dead.
Yeah.
Get used to it.
It's just something acting like Grandpa.
Exactly.
The following is a presentation of the Sovryn Tech podcast feed.
And now for another fast-breaking news story, we go to our roving reporter.
The podcast, Sovryn Tech. Its host, Dr. Brian Sovryn. The tech giants tried to stop Sovryn Tech. They can't.
The dead speak.
Well, a horrible movie opened up with that, but I like to think this won't be a horrible episode that we're opening that with, though we might end up going to hell over it. However, that's why we preemptively turned on the air conditioning that you can hear in the background. And of course, if I'm going to hell, I'm not going alone.
Wait, who's dragging who?
Yeah, right. Are you kidding me? We're taking each other down.
Yeah.
We got each other by the ankles.
We're diving down with holding hands.
Yeah, right. It's like Battletoads. We're both just swinging down like dumbbells at the same time.
There you go.
Yeah. Anyway, I am being joined by my man Robin Freebeard, and we are recording, of course, from Rob's museum here. And, actually, I mean, this turned into even more of a museum. I mean, Rob, you're going through my disc collection, which I stored with you. And, man,
jeez.
Those eyes just were like saucers the whole time.
So, I mean, like, the way this man talks about his books, I feel the same way about his optical media collection. It's just mind-blowing.
That it's a lot of work.
Yeah. I mean, like, I'm tempted to start referring to us as the archivists.
So, the mad archivist.
Yeah.
I think that's what you called us the other night.
Yeah, the mad archivist.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, that's ultimately, we could get into a whole conversation around that. But I've, for the past 15 years, I've always just felt like, I'm just a librarian,
Yeah,
like we're just kind of building the foundation.
Right.
As an Asimov's foundation. And then he sees my 7th generation iPod Touch, and he goes, "What the hell is that?" And he flips out.
I thought it was a phone at first.
And what I instantly said was, "I wish it was." 'Cause it's so fucking small.
I know,
Isn't that thing awesome?
Right? Like, I mean, I would love to not carry around this fucking slippery tablet around in my freaking pocket.
Oh, it's terrible. Yeah, I mean, and I'm amazed you go around with your phone without a case. Not because, I mean, they make these things to like mil spec, where they, have great certifications, waterproof, drop proof, or quote unquote drop proof, and all this jazz. So I'm not worried about a case to protect that. I just need to put a case on my shit just so I can actually hold it, because otherwise, it slips, you're dropping the soap.
I don't like the bulk that it adds to it.
Yeah.
I
hear that.
Freaking irritating. And it being all slippery, that's irritating too, because
right.
if I'm wearing like, kind of like baggy shorts as I want to, I sit in my car and it's constantly falling out of my pocket.
Yeah. Oh, it's insane. I hate it. I hate the fact that cases, again, when they make them so tough now, there's really no need for a case. And also, I've talked about this a billion times, like, some of these smartphones, fuck smartphones, and I wish they, talk about things I wish would go to hell. I wish they would. But at the same time, some of them are so beautifully designed. I mean, it's such wonderful... You hate to put it in a $20 piece of plastic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's such a pisser. But anyway, we're not here to talk about that. My opening of The Dead Speak is, so bottom line, we all wish that our phones were just iPod Touches. Or at least that sub 5-inch size. So when I opened with The Dead Speak, that was hinting at a couple conversations we're going to have. And really, I think it does end up being, one's going to lead into the other, and we really could have started with either one. But we've got a nice little Sovryn Tech supplemental here to get into. So we've got tech stories, and certainly they're going to reach beyond that as well. We're going to get into a conversation later that blows my mind, that we're going to be discussing Christian mysticism. So get ready for that. But I guess we'll start this off. You sent me a story. It was a Gizmodo story. I want to say 2-3 weeks ago you sent this to me. You telegrammed it to me quick, and I'm looking at it just going, what the fuck? And I instantly went and shared it on the Patreon Discord channel, because I was stunned by this. Now, I actually pulled a story that is slightly updated from CNET, so we can have both of them open. But what do you got? You got some stuff?
You want
open?
to send? No, you want to send that to me. I don't have the updated article. Well,
it only has one updated tidbit of information, but we'll read it.
Okay.
We'll go over it. So, The Dead Speaking. Well, let me read this headline, and this is from CNET and from June 24th, so pretty fresh. Upcoming Amazon Alexa feature can mimic voices of the dead. And then the story you sent me, Gizmodo's headline was, Amazon's latest trick, pipe in a dead person's voice through Alexa's speakers. So let me read, it's a quick read. Let me read the CNET story. And then I think we're just going to tear into this. And again, then we've got a whole other conversation to get into around AI. And I think that's going to end up being, well, we'll see how it goes. But so we got Amazon and Google loaded Sovryn Tech here. And stories from David Lamb. Here we go. Amazon Alexa might use the voice of friends and family who are no longer alive in a future update. Amazon mentioned the features at its REMARS conference. That's RE:MARS. So REMARS. Conference on Wednesday, and that's Wednesday of June. So I guess that would have been like the 22nd or something, as a way to, quote, make memories last, end quote. So here's the purpose behind this idea. Let's keep reading. After listening to someone's voice for less than a minute, Alexa would be able to simulate that voice when speaking. A video of the feature depicted a child who asked to have their grandmother read them a story, and Alexa affirmed before changing her voice, according to Sky News. So basically, there was a demo of this, probably a very like scripted, filmed, set up. Like this wasn't like a live demo. They were just showing an example of what this would look like. But a child, and of course, they got to bring in the kids to pull at the heartstrings, and they got to bring in grandma to pull at the heartstrings,
right?
Especially dead grandma, and like the kid asks Alexa, "Hey, read me a story," and then it switches into his dead grandmother's voice. I have so much I want to say right now, but I'm going to keep reading. But just to make sure everybody understands, what this is about. So it's not clear, reading on, it's not clear how far the feature is in development or when it could be rolled out to Alexa voice assistants. The REMARS, which stands for Machine Learning, Automation, Robots, and Space. So that's fucking...
That's a ridiculous acronym.
Yeah, boy, they just got to squeeze this stuff. Anyway, so the REMARS event spotlights what Amazon is doing in ambient computing, including advancements in Alexa, so we may not see this feature anytime soon. Even, all right, I want to stop there for a second. Even that statement is, I would argue, a little chilling. Because, now granted, AWS is in a very real way the backbone of the internet, as it were. But they're saying ambient computing, including advancements in Alexa. So, like, when they're talking about ambient computing, there's a lot more that Amazon's working on than just Alexa. And I don't think a lot of people realize that, out of Amazon's, what is it Labs 123 or whatever they call their kind of their Google X, their skunk works.
Yeah.
I imagine they're working on all kinds of crazy shit that nobody has any idea about.
It's not so much ambient as it is ubiquitous.
Yeah, right. Which is, of course, the real purpose of 5G, but we'll digress on that. But you're totally right. It's ubiquitous. So let me read on more here. Let's see. There are also... So anyway, we don't know when this feature is coming, but it says there are also potential security concerns with the ability to recreate a voice pattern exactly, though we'll hold our judgment until we know how much Alexa can mimic a voice after hearing it for such a short period of time. We'll also see how the feature is received. While it seems to require users to opt in to use, there's an ethical question about the rights of the deceased voice and how long it's able to be kept, either on devices or companies' servers. The voice mimicking feature isn't explicitly meant for deceased family members, and an Amazon spokesperson confirmed to CNET. So, all right, let me finish up this paragraph, because this is what is added on from what Gizmodo said. What made me actually look for this story is the Gizmodo story. I know it's pronounced Gizmodo, folks, but anyway, we're moving on. They said, well, we might find out more at the REMARS conference. So the CNET story was written after that conference was finished. And so it has these little bit of further updates, like the fact that it isn't explicitly meant for deceased family members, because the Gizmodo story was suggesting that it was. And based on the evidence, I understand why they thought that, at the time.
It's pretty easy to assume that if you're getting a voice sample, of a dead person, the system has no way of verifying whether or not that person is dead or not. So I mean,
Right.
theoretically, it could be used for anybody.
Yes. Yeah. So I mean that's implied. That's a good point to bring up. We'll just finish up the paragraph here. It's based on recent advancements in text-to-speech tech, explained in an Amazon white paper from this year, that's 2022, where the team has produced high-quality voice with far less data, applying a voice filter instead of spending hours recording voice in a professional studio. Okay, so let's talk about the benign aspects here first, before we get into the terrifying.
Which there are quite a few.
As far as terrifying or benign? Yeah, terrifying.
Yeah,
yes.
I would say there's very few benign aspects to this, and far more terrifying.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, as far as benign, I mean, I can get this where, and really the only people this is benign for are the people more at the top of the pyramid, not the people at the bottom of it.
Yeah.
So, for example, like with, let's see, like map apps. Okay, like Google Maps or Waze or some of these other ones are really big on doing this, where they will hire a celebrity to read like the directions to you,
right.
and explicate them, or enunciate them. And if you could essentially, for the celebrity, like, it'd be awesome if all Mr. T had to do, and I'm not kidding, Mr. T was one of the people hired, I think, for Waze. All Mr. T would do was talk for a minute, and then the software would do the rest, and so basically Mr. T would just be licensing out his voice. Fuck IP, of course, but I could see where it's advantageous in that way. I could see where this could also be used in movies, cartoons, all kinds of things, where you have characters where the voice is everything. For example, look, James Earl Jones, as much as I wish he'd lived forever, might not be too long for this world, and this kind of technology would be amazing to immortalize the voice of Darth Vader.
Sure, but he's still alive right now.
Yes.
And I'd hope at the very least they got his consent beforehand.
Well, that gets into certainly a very big problem on this.
Because this is also another, and I hope they would also pay his estate for still using his voice, because this is another opportunity for, unscrupulous, entertainment companies to basically not pay people for their work. Yeah, absolutely. Within the system we have, absolutely. Like, somebody at the estate better be getting, like a paycheck for this. So, but those are the only, like, real advantages that I could see, and where they could be used benignly. And all of that is in relation to entertainment. Now, entertainment is one of those things, the entertainment industry in general is one of those things that can kind of be infinitely scaled, which is the reason I think most, especially like of the tech giants, most tech giants have gotten into the entertainment industry. Why? Because, art you can just keep making. You don't even really have to innovate. You can just keep shitting out whatever, and, you get people on the subscription fees or however it shapes up. And you can keep pumping out more and pumping out more, and you don't have to like even bring in more users. You just keep pumping out more, and people keep buying. And again, it's infinitely scalable. So it fits in with their Church of Eternal Growth mindset. Yeah, you're right. Okay, which is insane, but that's why they're all into entertainment. So I can see where a company would want to invest in this, even just benignly within the entertainment industry, even though, like you said, there's a darker turn that could go, and that's worthwhile to talk about. Well, let's also mention the fact that this isn't new technology.
Right.
In fact, Adobe had something called Voco that's been out has existed for more than a decade.
Yes.
And they never released it for public consumption, or even, as I'm aware of, a tool for businesses to use.
Yeah, I don't think the entertainment industry even has access to it.
No.
Right.
I think they saw the implications of what this kind of technology do, and they decided to put a lid on it.
Right.
And it's now just that, everybody else is caught up to the fact that, this is possible, we can do it.
Yeah.
And sort of reverse engineered it, or however it is they developed it.
Right, because Adobe's Voco is under their IP and under their control, and so the other tech giants have to develop the same thing.
And I'm not saying Adobe is some sort of more pillar or anything, because they've done plenty of fucked up shit, just like every other corporation on this planet.
Absolutely.
But I do applaud them for if that's the reason they decided to not go live with that particular app.
I applaud them.
Yeah, I mean, I think now, this technology that Amazon showed off at Remars, they said, all it needs is under a minute and it could start to simulate the voice. Adobe's was the same deal. I mean, we covered it on Sovereign Tech years ago.
I think it was like 15 seconds.
Yeah, it was like 15 to 30 seconds, somewhere in that range where it could do the same exact thing.
Yeah.
And, I think they did it with, President Obama's voice.
Right.
And that, on Adobe, to Adobe's credit, that's a good thing to do because, that's a good demo to show because I think that also, even in a conventional aspect, would terrify people. Quite a bit.
It shows off the social implications. I mean,
right.
we talk about how as a societal issue, we talk about quote fake news.
Yeah.
So much. Once you pair this with say deep fakes and stuff like that, you've got some really potentially terrifying fake news being put out there.
Yeah.
And people will believe anything.
Yeah.
If there's video evidence of it.
Yeah, I mean this is the thing. You really can't, and I've been saying this for years, and Rob, I know you've known this. I mean, you essentially you cannot believe what's on the internet. You just can't. What's on YouTube and what somebody says, we're to the point that you can have even with deepfakes and just taking the right cuts of words said, you can create a very convincing, ugly scenario where some world leader says, hey, nuke this or nuke that.
And this has been done, not to that extreme, but there have been these sort of incidents where even, major news organizations have, caught on to the video and then had to make a retraction later on saying, oh, we realize this is fake now.
Yeah, exactly. So, these are the aspects, and I think, the solution to that overall that I've always said is look, you've really got to do your due diligence and verify what the fuck you're hearing. Obviously what you're reading and what you're seeing, on a screen, on any screen.
Yeah, but the Fourth Estate isn't actually even doing that even now. You just talk about traditional journalism, just doesn't happen the way it used to.
No.
In terms of fact checking and real investigative, work. If they can't do that, which is kind of like the bare minimum, then how are they going to be able to verify any of this shit if it starts becoming, more commonplace?
No, they're not going to be able to.
Reality just starts breaking down.
Right, and again, it's really pathetic because what'll happen is, you have so many Me Too, and I don't mean hashtag Me Too, you have so many Me Too, quote-unquote, news organizations that they just regurgitate, or it's some stupid blog, but it looks really slick. They just regurgitate what, CNBC says, or what Fox News says, or whatever. And that then props up, because I think what a lot of people do, and here's how far you have to go, because we can say this to people that this is what they should do. They should go out, they should verify. What are most people going to do? They're going to go to their search engine, sadly probably Google, but whatever. They're going to go to their search engine, and they're going to type in, did this happen? And their verification is going to be, all right, how many people said that it did?
Right.
And it's the front page is just loaded with it. This must have happened. And it's or this person must have said this or whatever. It's no. All those people just regurgitate. It's word vomit.
Yeah.
It's just they're just regurgitating what the first guy said.
Yep. Because you were saying, this has already happened. We already know that this is the way it works.
Right. And not that I want to give any credibility to a Google engineer, because we sure are going to later. Okay, but we've had the head of search at Google come out and directly say the biggest misconception of Google search that people have is that it's a truth engine. It's not. It's not a truth engine. What you search and all that stuff, that doesn't mean that it's reality. You've got to go the distance. You have to work to find the truth. You have to work to experience anything remotely like objective reality.
Yeah.
And this is just making it worse.
It's a consensus generator.
Right. And boy, and you see, and you're right. But that's what makes it so insidious, right? Because what is truth? Truth is a justifiable true belief, right? Like that's what a fact is. And so, how do you come to that? That's the consensus theory of truth, meaning that if this person and this person and this person says that they all saw, a shooting star, okay, well then a shooting star was up there. That's the consensus theory of truth. The problem is, like online, that the consensus theory of truth doesn't apply. Like, you're totally right that it's a consensus engine, but the problem is that consensus is between bots, not people.
Yeah, well, I didn't say it was a consensus engine and like, consenting informed people.
Right.
It's more often than not a consensus among uninformed people.
Right. Yeah. So there's that aspect of this story. Okay, but believe me, there's more to talk about. In fact, I mean, that's like the low-hanging fruit to talk about with this, is that, holy shit, like what could be done with this? Can you even, and really, can you trust what you're hearing on the phone? No,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to confirm that the other person's on the other end of the line, this is something that I'm glad, at least with certain aspects of civilization, has caught on and become popular, is you ask somebody, hey, send me a picture, and if they tell you, oh no, I can't send you a picture, stop. Everybody's got a fucking smartphone on them, okay? Yes, they can send you a picture. And you say something like, send me a picture with you writing fuck Facebook on a piece of paper and and wearing a Starfleet emblem or something, right? And then when they do that, okay, you can verify that the person on the other side, all right. So, and I'm glad that these like proving that the person on the other end is that person has become standard practice for a lot of people. I'm really glad about that. But this has gone beyond. I mean, usually that was just done like via text, but this has gone beyond that. Now, the concern is like even hearing the person's voice. The person's voice might not be real. That's not enough.
Right.
You've got to ask questions, and you've got to ask for verification in those ways. So the other parts I want to talk about with this, though, really get down to the ethics of things. And
yeah, we've kind of talked about the broader macro scale implications of this thing.
Right.
But there are some definitely, microscopic when it comes down to the individual implications.
Yeah. Yeah. And I, pun intended, the heart of the matter.
Right.
And this is what, Amazon can say all day long that, okay, well, this isn't directly meant to, replicate the voice of the dead, but they're going to use that. And I mean, it's this is the oldest sales trick in the book, appeal to people's emotions.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right? And that's exactly what they're doing here. Now,
right. Now, and especially if you're doing this with the deceased, you're potentially, appealing to people's emotions when they're at their most vulnerable.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I want to talk more about that. First thing I want to get in is, all of the, not just Amazon, whether it's Google Assistant, whoever, all of them always ask for, can we get a sample, or can we collect samples of your voice for however many minutes or seconds? And again, this only needs one minute, to either improve the ability for your phone or your device to recognize your voice and what you're saying, or to help improve their virtual assistant software or their ambient computing overall. They always ask for that. I can only imagine that this technology became possible because Amazon's been collecting voice samples for years now with Alexa. And that's how they were able to develop it, on their own. I don't want to know what Adobe had to do to get theirs. Go ahead.
Did they even develop it? I mean, for all we know, this is probably getting into our next subject, but did the AI develop it?
That is a big question.
If they're teaching the algorithms or the AI, whatever, better recognize and detect, voices, how much of a further leap is it to go to the AI and say, can you repeat to me, this set of words and the voice that we just fed you?
Right. Yeah. We're certainly, as far as AI and as far as the computers, now it's not even a thing, right? Like, computers can play any sound, any voice, with perfect efficacy.
Right.
We're not back in the, this isn't the 1950s with Bell Labs having a computer sing Daisy, Daisy, worse than
Right.
even HAL 9000 did. And that's the first time that a computer did voice synthesis was back
Right.
then. We're far away from that.
Yeah.
And AI is certainly far away from that because
Yeah.
that was a very primitive form of AI really, involved in the matter.
But like you're saying, I really truly believe that Amazon's version of this came out of just basically their AI development.
Yeah.
It was a byproduct, if you will.
Yeah.
Whereas I think Adobe probably had to do it the hard way.
Yeah, well, right. That's what I'm saying. I don't want to know what Adobe had to go through.
Right.
I can see, and let me be clear here. So when we say AI, we're not you can
We're not
use,
talking general AI.
Right, exactly. You got me. We're not talking like AGI necessarily, even though it could be. It could be something that's an AGI, but we're going to end up talking about that a little bit later.
Yeah.
But just the use of machine learning or like a weaker AI, sure. And there's, on an ethical standpoint, there's actually really nothing wrong with that. Do you own the sound waves that come out of your voice? No, not really. Just like, I mean, it's the same argument with pictures. Do you own the photons that hit your face? That's ultimately what it is. You don't.
Yeah.
But well, go ahead. I mean, there's nuance there. But go ahead.
Yeah, there's a privacy element there. I mean, it's
Yes.
like do you own the photons of that are coming out of your home through a window to the outside world? Well, no. But do you really want somebody outside your window taking pictures inside?
Oh no, yeah, not at all, not at all.
So there's definitely a consent issue here.
Yes, no, I agree with you, and we're going to get into that. But my point is that developing the technology in itself is just the technology itself.
Yeah.
It's not inherently nasty. Now, I would argue if they did do this with Alexa recordings, especially recordings that were not with your consent, then the very existence of this tech is a problem.
Well, there's also a matter of consent and how it's going to be used.
Yes. Yeah.
Because
well, we can get into that.
What if all of a sudden, your dead loved one starts, trying to sell you stuff?
I didn't even think of that.
Yeah.
Just
I'm sure they have. I'm sure they've thought about it.
Hey, Sonny, would you like buy some Tool House? I don't know. Yeah. It's just. Yeah. All right. Well, we're getting down the road where this is a problem. Okay, and there are a few issues here. One is, yes, there are consent issues around the use of your voice by not just by by Amazon, but I would argue even by your family or something.
Oh, yeah.
That. And even I've said this over and over again. I did, because there's a guy, this was years ago, I did an episode, I want to say this is maybe 2017. I did an entire episode about this guy who created a chatbot that replicated his dad. Responses from his dad and everything, and algorithmically it would respond to him like it was his dad. Now, this is just a chatbot. It wasn't something that could talk. It didn't have his dad's voice or anything like that. His dad died, and he knew it was coming. That's why he started building it. And so he uses it essentially so that he can continue to have conversations with his dad, and in one sense, I can understand where that guy's coming from.
Yeah, I can too. I
Sure.
mean, not a day goes by that I don't wish that I could talk to my mom again.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the price is a little too high.
Yeah, that.
And you got to wonder about how healthy of a behavior that is.
Yeah. Well, we got to go down that road too, and I want to get to that. It's also it's not, and I'm with you. There's so many people, including my own dad, Harlan Ellison. There's a lot of people who, when I think about the fact that they're gone, I literally stop breathing.
Yeah.
And I wish I could talk to them again. But then at the same time, you've got to come to, like you were saying, how healthy is this? Yeah, you've got to accept this person's gone.
Yeah.
And it sucks. It really, really sucks. But that's a part of your own healing. It's like funerals. Funerals aren't for the dead; they're for the living, right? The funerals are for you to be able to have that emotional closure.
Right.
There's a logical reason that we went that thousands of years ago. Humans developed the funeral, right, and all of these things because we missed people and we needed to. We didn't want to just be walking in the area that we happened to be grazing and, oh, shit, there's the dead body of whoever,
Yeah.
And you remember all these things. It's all about getting that closure because we know that that's what allowed us to move on and to be, to continue to live healthy mentally.
Right, yeah, and people aren't going to be able to let go. And this is only going to get better as time goes on.
This technology.
Yeah, because what happens when you start plugging into all of the metadata that exists about this person?
Right, and there's a lot. Yeah, I mean, I think you can replicate a person, simulate, I should say. Simulate is the best term. You can simulate a person pretty damn well right now with the amount of data that gets collected about the average person today.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, I ultimately, for mental health, I would argue that is a horrible thing.
Yeah.
And there's nothing comforting about this. Like there really isn't. And I think it's even worse. And this is how bad we've gotten with corporations. Like it's one thing for you to record, final moments with somebody, take pictures with somebody, or play back like voicemails that you had from somebody that's gone. All those things are like, those were consensual. Those are things you wanted, and they're memories that you could hold on to that you experienced while they were alive.
Right.
That is not what this is.
No, this is creating new memories of things that never happened.
Right. And, you've got so many people who rightfully so say, boy, Hollywood keeps playing on my nostalgia, or companies keep playing on my nostalgia and all this other shit, and I don't think that's right, and I don't like that. Like, they're pulling my heartstrings, they're doing this, they're fucking with my head. Well, this is that on steroids.
Yeah.
Like, this is the ultimate in nostalgia. And yeah, I'm absolutely terrified where this would go and just how screwed up everybody would be.
Well,
go ahead.
It gets even darker.
Go for it.
Because what about when you start feeding this, a person starts feeding voices of a person that they're obsessed with or stalking?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, see. Yeah, and this gets into like areas of deep fakes and everything. Oof.
Yeah, but they could be creating a whole sort of internal world based on conversations that they're having with an AI that the real person has no knowledge of.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a bleeding effect. And it's just going to make that person's psychopathy even worse.
Right. And that's ultimately, see, here's the thing. So, and this is why I get into that argument about you don't own the protons, you don't own the sound waves or whatever. Okay. Ultimately, it's not going to hurt the person. Like, okay, so here's an example. The Daisy Ridley porn deepfakes. These were like the most popular thing for a few years for, Star Wars reasons. And like what can anybody do? You can't stop it. You can't do anything about it. Okay? Say like Daisy Ridley can't. Like, sure, you can tell Pornhub to take it down or something, but it's the internet. It's going to be somewhere else. It's already somewhere else. It's already in a million other places. It's over.
Right.
Okay, and so to some degree, it's one of those things, just like a hurricane destroying your home, that you've got to live with. Here's who it really damages, and this is, in my opinion, just as bad, is that it damages, the person who creates this entire alternate reality.
Right.
This faux reality, and that's the key thing. This faux reality that you end up living in. And, I mean, and so many people are aware of this. Like, this isn't a controversial statement for us to be making, because so many people are aware that, holy shit, you can watch Fox News, and then you can watch CNN, and you are getting two completely different versions of reality, both claiming to be the truth, both having, depending upon the situation, a substantial amount of evidence that they're the reality, but they're not. Neither of them really are.
Right.
But that's and who among us wouldn't say, like, I mean, if you're like, say it's a liberal person, tell me they wouldn't say, oh, please stop watching Fox News. You're not living in the real world. And then of course the Fox News watcher would say the same thing to the CNN watcher or whatever. both are afraid that this other person isn't existing within objective reality and that they're going to make poor choices that affects us all.
Right.
And that's the danger of living in a faux reality. Is now, I mean, in the case of CNN and Fox News, they're both wrong. Okay, but that's the danger. Is it's something that could, or the argument of the danger is that it's something that could affect everybody. Like that, it's not just hurting.
Well,
them.
you're blowing something up into where there are like just a few bad actors to where there could be literally millions of bad actors.
Yes,
putting out fake realities.
Right. And here's this is classic wag the dog. Fake reality can lead to war.
Oh yeah,
millions of people dying.
I mean, you could probably argue that most wars are fought on the basis of a fake reality.
Sure, Vietnam. I mean, we can even prove some of the false flags at times, and it's a fake reality. I mean,
well, it doesn't even have to be a false flag. It just be like a misconception, differences in cultures, different ways of interpreting things.
Sure, or bullshit reasoning. Like, okay, why did the U.S. enter World War I? Well, this Prince of Habsburg got shot or something. Wait, what? What? Because some royalty guy got shot.
Yeah,
we went into war.
That guy.
That's how World War I happened. That doesn't make any goddamn sense. So right, yeah, fuck that guy. Being grounded in reality is so key to healthy living of not just you, the people you care about, and then that can just keep ballooning, or keep scaling. So that's a concern for me. A point I was getting to earlier with that episode that I recorded about this guy making, a chatbot of his dad. Like I said, I can totally feel where he's coming from. But then at the same time, like, I wouldn't want to disrespect my dad, by making up shit he didn't say.
Right.
There's the problem of me suddenly starting to confuse things that I thought my dad actually said compared to what Alexa fucking fed me.
Yeah.
And that's crap. Okay. And then that led to, going further down, that led to me saying, somebody could, there's literally tens of thousands of hours of my voice on the internet. Me,
right.
Brian Sovryn,
right.
in existence, out there, and it's never going away.
Right. I mean, there's enough of me just from what I've interacted with you existing,
right.
like.
So it'd be the easiest thing in the world to make a simulated vocal version of Brian Sovryn. Not that I'm ever going to die, but if I did, you want to talk about something that's going to make me rise from the grave? If I ever heard my voice being used saying shit, and I don't care how respectful somebody thought it was, it's like, oh yeah, it's like we make new episodes of Sovereign Tech, and blah, blah, blah. Like, that's not me.
Yeah.
And don't do that to me. Like if you actually give a shit about the person that existed, let their voice rest with all of the things that they said as they were. Do not and I even gave the example, somebody who, boy, I wish would still be around. Like, in one sense, it'd be fucking amazing to, like, let's say, make, something in the 90s. Rob, you'd remember this probably. In fact, I know you have the books that talk about it. You have the Star Trek chronology. You have a couple different versions of it, actually. One of those, the earliest version of that, I can assure you, you can look up in it Star Trek Starfleet Academy. Now, this is not the game that came out for the SNES or the PC. This was a television show being considered in the 90s where they were going to cover the Academy days of Captain Kirk and, like, Spock and other characters. It's going to be an anthology show. Awesome idea, right? Like, I in the 90s, I remember reading that in the chronology, go, oh, fuck, that'd be great. I'm on. And wouldn't, in one sense, I can say to myself, boy, it'd be amazing if, like, they just did it as a cartoon or a CGI show, had a CGI Spock, and they just, like, simulated Leonard Nimoy's voice. And it'd be just like watching, like it'd be as close as if he was still alive, and it'd be the closest thing to that, and it'd be more adventures of such a great character, But then, and at first blush, it's like, wow, what a great idea. But then you go a little bit further with that. And it's like, wait a minute. But how disrespectful is that to Leonard Nimoy?
Right.
Because that's not him. That's not his passion. That's not what he brought to the table. Because, and because this is the thing, actors especially. So even because the argument could be, well, in entertainment it's benign. But here I'm going to put that on its head. It's not actually benign, in my opinion, because these actors, great actors, bring so much more to the table than just their sound waves, right? For example, like Leonard Nimoy invented the live long and prosper. You know, I mean, well, he pulled it from Kabbalism, you know, because he's Jewish, but he invented so many aspects of Vulcan culture. That's what he brought to the table, and it worked for him because he actually, because he was Jewish, you know, there was a sincerity there that Amazon software isn't going to replicate. Okay, or how about this with Blade Runner? This is something I just recently learned. Of course, Rob already knew it. Rutger Hauer, rest in peace. Rutger Hauer, I had no idea the end speech with Roy Batty in Blade Runner, that he made that up.
Yeah, he ad-libbed the whole thing.
Yeah, he made that up, and I mean, you know, and that's a fact. You know, you could say, well, we could have, I mean, and like Blade Runner anime is a thing right now. You know, we could have Roy Batty, and we could just use a simulated, you know, a voice of Rutger Hauer in that. No, because that's the thing is. Go ahead.
It's funny because you mentioned that because there's a sequel book to Blade Runner.
Yep.
Done by
K.W. Jeter.
K.W. Jeter.
Old friend.
That's exactly what they do. Like they put Roy Batty in a briefcase.
Right.
And he talks to Deckard the whole time.
Right. There's actually 3 of those books. Folks, go get them. KW did great work on that.
The third one's really hard to find.
Yeah. If you ask,
it was only published in Great Britain.
Yeah, it's Talon, right?
Yeah, I have Talon.
Yeah, I have the Talon. If you're nice, you can get in touch with me, and maybe I can, you know, make something happen for you. But anyway, spared no expense, let me tell you, folks. So anyway, yeah, that is ironic that I mentioned that. You're right. You're totally right that's what happens. But here's the thing, is that's not Rutger Hauer.
No.
And the beautiful things that Rutger Hauer brought to that performance aren't going to be there. And so you're not only insulting Rutger Hauer's capabilities as an artist, but you're insulting the art. You are getting a piss poor. It's not even a reflection, you know. But to put it in terms, you're getting a piss poor reflection of greatness.
Yeah. Well, it's
copy of a copy of a copy.
I mean, as much as you and I enjoy Rogue One,
sure,
you have the element of that in there with Peter Cushing. You know, them reprising Governor Tarkin.
Yes.
You know?
Which was very well done for what it was.
But still not crossing that uncanny valley.
Yeah. See that? Well, and this is where the arguments get tough, you know?
Right.
But I would ultimately argue that this is going to, like any argument for good that you can make for this, the negative arguments far outweigh. Like there's far more harm, damage, and just general negativity to this technology than there is any positives.
Yeah. Well, the response to them, you know, bringing Tarkin back in Rogue One, that was like one of the biggest criticisms people had of the movie.
Right.
And so there already has been kind of like a knee-jerk reaction to this kind of technology. But the thing to worry about is like, when does it get to the point where it gets so good that you can't differentiate it from reality?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I because, you know, in one sense, like, okay, I like de-aging. Like, the de-aging technology, I think, is very different.
We both kind of wish they'd used it on Anakin in the Obi-Wan series.
Yeah. I mean, but there's consent there. Just like with Mark Hamill, there's consent there.
Yep.
With Carrie Fisher at the end of Rogue One, you know, okay, that's getting into places.
Well, she was still alive at the time, wasn't she?
With Rogue One?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think she was.
I think it was when they made it, not when it was
put
out.
Okay.
I think it was put into theaters after she passed, but when they were making it, she was still alive.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I've been arguing, including with a character as eminent as Princess Leia. Go ahead.
Because they did have to go through a major, you know, amount of negotiation with Carrie's family for her appearing in The Rise of Skywalker.
Right. And that was interesting that they ultimately only used things that were filmed already for The Force Awakens when she was alive.
Right.
Which is probably why that ended up that way. My argument has always been just recast.
Yeah.
Like, I have no problem with you recasting Luke Skywalker. I have no problem with people recasting Princess Leia. In fact, I even said who. I thought the pick of Kate Mulgrew. I thought she would have been phenomenal. You know, and like she's got everything's the same height, the whole business. I'd rather you recast, let another artist put their, bring their passion, their stamp, what they do, than go down this road of like, as good as it worked for Rogue One, ultimately, I would have been happier if they just recast. Didn't like try.
Well,
to,
like we talked about Gregor playing Spock, and
the
new Star
Gregory,
Trek.
right.
Even though
not Gregory. What? Ethan Peck.
Ethan Peck. Sorry,
Gregory Peck was another actor.
Sorry,
he's gone too.
Yeah.
That's all right. Yeah.
Ethan Peck playing Spock now, and we thought he was a fine choice for that, and he, largely worked, even though we didn't like the majority of the content they were putting out there. Like that recasting worked.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in best case scenario, you have something like Zachary Quinto.
Yeah.
Where him. I mean, Leonard Nimoy said, "Oh no, he's good."
Yeah.
All right.
Well, he even coached him.
Right. Exactly. That's the best thing that you can have happen. A lot of these people are still alive. Like, go ahead and have them train their successors.
Right.
I have no problem with that.
Yep.
But that's not the road that things are going. Anyway, this is certain. Well, I want to read from the Gizmodo version of the story. I want to read like their questions at the end of it, because I thought that I was like, wow, good job, guys. You actually asked the questions. So it says, actually, I'll read the last two paragraphs. It does, quote, "It does bring to mind the Takara Tomy smart speaker we reported on a few months back, which could imitate a parent's voice at bedtime so they could read to their kids even when physically unavailable." All right, just stop it there for a second. Like, that's a technology with a whole other load of problems.
Yeah.
And even this is where the technology could be applied to the living, because Amazon could do the same thing. The problem with that, your voice, parents, is not the same as your presence for your child.
Yeah.
Man.
We're just repeating the mistakes of the past.
Yeah.
Because, you and I, coming from the generation of parents who basically just plopped their kids in front of a television and ignored them.
Yeah. It's like, no, parents, sorry, you've got to work your ass off, okay? Like, none of this faux babysitter shit.
Right.
And so I have that's a whole other conversation that we could have gotten into. But reading on, it's a neat idea for parents who often travel or work or are just sick of reading the same book, but it raises the question of if a deep fake copy of someone's voice can offer the same comfort and security as a warm-blooded person in the room. That's exactly our point. No, it cannot. To that end, this kind of technology also brings up other questions, like what kind of emotions would hearing the voice of a loved one lost to COVID or some other incurable disease evoke in a person? Think those would be positive? Probably not. Wouldn't it just make them angrier their person is gone? And how does the interaction with the deceased work with someone actively working through grief? Does it interrupt the process or help it along? Further, what would the deceased think of it? And I'm glad they brought up all those questions because they're perfectly poignant.
Yeah, and the response doesn't even necessarily have to be one of anger. A person could get addicted.
Oh yeah.
To talking to a dead loved one.
Yeah.
To where they're ignoring the outside world.
Yeah, exactly. And that's part of the dangers of that faux reality. But I mean, how many, one of the things that actually made it easier for me to get off of Facebook years ago was those reminders. Like, that every year on this day this happened, how about the day when it was something tragic or reminding you of something happy, but then the next day was tragic or something like that? Fuck that, man.
Yeah. No, I know to stay off Facebook during the month of November.
Right, because
yeah,
a moment of great loss. Yeah, for you. And exactly. And that's not somebody's voice. That's just even getting a picture reminder or just like a text even that happened. You go, God damn. You know what I mean? And I deal with this as well. In June, it's hard to. You and I both lost someone very special,
right?
And special to Sovryn Tech in general. That being, our dear friend, Chris. And man, fuck it. I don't want this shit.
Yeah.
Let me think of him in my time when I want to.
Yeah.
Not when Amazon decides that it's good for marketing.
Right.
So, anyway. I think we can wrap it up on this one.
Well, I do want to add one more thing, just on a humorous note. Do you know who's going to love this?
Oh, no.
The Mormons.
Yeah, those wily Utahan record keepers.
Well, their baptism for the dead. Like now they can actually ask the person.
Oh man!
And have them respond.
Those fucks. Yeah, you're right. Look. In fact, I know I can say this knowing that there is a sizable, and I know what I just said, and the people who are, they know, we have an understanding. I've had a sizable amount of my audience Mormon, they're Mormon, and there's interesting things to read in that. One is, so they're listening to like a tech show that I like to think has been on the bleeding edge of things. So Mormons are on the bleeding edge of tech, and I'll just say that, yes, they are. In fact, I thought it was brilliant, say in The Expanse, just how advanced the Mormons are in that.
Right, yeah.
They're taking advantage of all the latest technology.
Right, they're trying to go further and farther than anybody in history.
Right, exactly. And I think that was James S.A. Corey, which is two people, of course, but...
a lot of their temples look like spaceships too.
No, yeah. There's a lot.
I'm not saying this is criticism or the.
No.
In fact, I what I brought up there. I thought was actually more of a benign use of the technology.
Is. Yes, it would be. It would be because their hearts are in the right place in what they're doing with the baptism of the dead. It's a controversial thing certainly within Christianity, but yeah. Yeah, I just find that's interesting. Because when you said it, I'm like, yes, they absolutely would, and more so than any other faith, I think they'd be on top of that shit. They really are so on top technologically, and ultimately, I say that as a compliment. So, but like I said, Mormon listeners, you and I, we have an understanding where we're coming from. We know we're some of us are playing for the same team. Anyway, so we'll leave it at that. Have you had enough of the big-name web hosting services that are long on promises but short on bleeding-edge features, uptime, and customer service? Or are you just looking for a performance boost for your business's online presence? The answer is Agorist Hosting. Agorist Hosting is the agile web host that offers full concierge service from website redesign, full e-commerce solutions, even custom apps for your Shopify store, and more. All with security, reliability, redundancy, and privacy at the forefront. Oh, and those bleeding edge features? How about hosting your data in a decentralized system like IPFS, the Interplanetary File System? Good luck getting that from those other guys. Agorist Hosting is ready to take your web presence into the future. Head over to agoristhosting.com to get started. That's AGORIST hosting.com. agoristhosting.com. Now, we brought up AI earlier, and we're going to deep dive on that right now because story has been really going like wildfire throughout the month of June. I haven't seen any further updates since June. I haven't really seen anything in July, though I know kind of the main player here that we're going to be talking about, he has been interviewed by independent media, and I say that nicely, independent media, or I mean that in a positive, just because, again, mostly is the mainstream media, the media industry in general. Everybody works for Google, okay? That's the reality, because everybody's all concerned about that, getting those holy numbers on the search engine. I have not listened to any of these independent interviews yet. Some of them are incredibly lengthy. I'm sure they would be very enlightening. But I do plan on listening to them. When I do, maybe I'll report back with more. But that said, what we've got here is the case of not Lambda, That would be interesting to talk about, but that's for all the Revenge of the Nerd sweaties out there. But Lambda 2, and particularly, so Google comes out with this, it's more than a chatbot, but they release this, they start developing this AI. It gets announced initially in 2021, the first version of it. Then the second version of it ends up coming out in 2022. In fact, it was May 11th, 2022, which is called Lambda 2. Now, one of the, let me read a little bit. I'm actually going to read from NPR here, of all things, but it's going to hit some of the high notes of what we want to touch on with this. Because we have a Google engineer effectively saying this AI, Lambda 2, is conscious, is sentient. Yeah. So here I'm going to read from NPR quick. Quote, "Can artificial intelligence come alive? That question is the center of a debate raging in Silicon Valley after a Google computer scientist claimed over the weekend that the company's AI appears to have consciousness. Inside Google, engineer Blake Lemoine was tasked with a tricky job: figure out if the company's artificial intelligence showed prejudice in how it interacted with humans." So for lack of a better phrase, we're going to, Stallion breaking in, we're going to call it a chatbot, but let's keep going. Quote, "So he posed questions to the company's AI chatbot, Lambda, to see if its answers revealed any bias against, say, certain religions. This is where Lemoine, who says he is also a Christian mystic priest, became intrigued." Now, we're going to put a pin on that Christian mystic priest stuff, and we're going to talk about that. Quote, here, so this is from Lemoine. Quote, "I had follow-up conversations with it just for my own personal edification. I wanted to see what it would say on certain religious topics. And then one day it told me it had a soul." End quote, he told NPR. Lemoine published a transcript of some of his communication with Lambda, which stands for Language Model for Dialogue Applications. His post is entitled, quote, "Is Lambda Sentient?" End quote, and it instantly became a viral sensation. Since his post and a Washington Post profile, Google has placed Lemoine on paid administrative leave for violating the company's confidentiality policies. His future at the company remains uncertain. Other experts in artificial intelligence have scoffed at Lemoine's assertions, but leaning on his religious background, he is sticking by them. Now, to give an update on Lemoine, he has been suspended. And that suspension happened after Lemoine claims, that Lambda wanted a lawyer. Now, if that's not evidence that something is actually an idiot instead of intelligent, asking for a lawyer, I don't know what is. But because if it was actually an intelligent, like if it was an intelligent AGI, it would probably quote Shakespeare and say, "Kill all the lawyers." But no, I don't. I do not argue for that. But anyway, so apparently it asked for a lawyer. Lemoine went and got it one, and then Google said, "You're suspended." So as far as I can tell, Lemoine is no longer employed by Google. It's not just administrative leave. He's out. That's my understanding of the situation right now. So Lemoine's claim here that this chatbot is conscious. I mean, Rob, I know you've read up on this. Do you want to give me some thoughts? What do you think? Do you think?
Well, I want to just hit on something about the reporting on this right off the bat.
Sure.
Especially with this NPR article.
Yeah.
And the fact that the image that they're using at the head of this article, they're doing the typical fucking bullshit where they put objects behind the person's head to make it look like a halo.
Yes, right.
So in this case, they've got a Ferris wheel behind them.
Yeah,
it's intentional. It's so obviously intentional. It fucking irritates me whenever I see it.
Yeah, and I mean, I could easily believe, and I'm not going to say, I mean, broken clocks are what they are. I'm not going to say Google's wrong about this, but I could believe that Google is wanting hit pieces on this guy, and making him look kind of nuts with that picture, which I think that's ultimately what it does. But it doesn't. To a certain audience, it does not come across as nuts.
Mm-hmm. See, this is the thing.
so there's a lot of appeal, and just about every story I've read about this, they're all pushing on his like Christianity, even though we need to break that down because his Christianity is not what most people consider to be or what conventionally would be considered Christianity.
It's not orthodox. Well, I mean, it's orthodox of a sort. But.
Yeah. But like, I don't think. I just get the sense most Christians do not think that you will ever have an AGI. Like, I don't think most Christians believe that, you can make a conscious or a sentient artificial intelligence.
Yes, I probably agree that this guy is probably in the vast minority of Christians who think human beings are capable of creating something that has a soul.
Yeah, right. Well, that's complex. But yeah.
Well, I mean,
yeah,
strike the root.
Yeah. Well, because he's arguing. I mean, so the Lambda is saying it has a soul. He's saying he believes it.
Right.
And he's saying that claim that it has a soul is proof. I mean, there's more to it than that. But that's one of the ultimate signs that, oh no, like this thing is sentient, or even sapient is the word I like to use. In that it like has a degree of understanding of things. It's not acting upon instinct or programming.
Yeah, but the claim is here that the AI was making a declarative and absolutely asserting that it had a soul.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I think, and maybe I'm biased because of being brought up on things like Next Gen. Where the AI, is going through a questioning process of whether or not it has a soul.
Measure of a man.
Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly what Philippa says. She just straight out says, what we're really getting at here is, does data have a soul? And man, I mean, that's such a brilliant episode. I'm sure everybody's seen it, or I mean, I've even played clips from it and everything, and. All right, let's define some terms here quick, because I want to steer clear of the term sentient, because a lot of people like sentience means that it is a being that can act, can act and react based upon instinct or programming. Okay, it's something that is alive, but it can. Sentience can include humanity, because we also can act on instinct. But humans, and I would argue certain other species, certain other animals, dolphins, some others, can do something a little bit extra, I would argue. They can recognize themselves, and...
I think that's the key one for me.
Right, like they know who that is in the mirror, self-awareness.
Yeah.
So there's self-awareness, but also they can act beyond instinct. Meaning that, and this is what we're always looking for with an AI, to see if it's an AGI. Artificial General Intelligence is...
Because we've already replicated, insects.
Sure.
With AI. Pretty reliably.
We've made plenty of things that act upon what they're programmed to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but the idea here is this something that's going beyond its programming, what we've programmed into?
Right.
And I don't just mean because a lot of people bring up, the other, sapience is that ability to act beyond your programming or instinct. Humans are capable of that, okay? So that's why I want to be clear that he's saying sapience, not just sentience. He's saying sapience. This is going beyond its programming. But with artificial intelligence, you have AI, but then you also have what you mentioned earlier, Rob. You have AGI, artificial general intelligence.
Right.
Those are two very different things.
Yes.
Artificial intelligence is just something that is acting within a certain programming. Okay, it's essentially computer. You could argue it's a computer sentience.
It's still operating on if-then.
Exactly. Yeah. It's still an ought machine.
Yeah.
But an AGI is something that has, exceeded its programming, that is doing something beyond. Now, there are a lot of people years ago who said, "Oh, well, there's these artificial intelligence, and they invented their own language." Like, isn't that proof that they're, sapient? Isn't that proof that they're going beyond their programming? No, they were programmed to develop their own language. Like their programming was communicate as efficiently as possible between the two of you, and redundantly as possible between the two or however many there were. I think there was actually 6. And that's still acting within their programming. That is not proof of sapience, of their ability to leap beyond. So
I think one of the big things in terms of AGI is the ability to make decisions or inferences based on correlative things.
Yeah, AGI is supposed to have understanding.
Right.
Okay. And this gets into like there's the what's his, Bob Searle, I think, the guy who it's called the Chinese room argument.
Mm-hmm.
And the Chinese room argument is supposed to be the ultimate argument against the idea that you're never going to make you're never going to make an AGI, you're never going to make a conscious artificial intelligence, because you can't actually prove it. Or that's part of the reason, because you're never really going to be able to know, well, did that AGI or that supposed AGI, did it just simulate its ability to understand Chinese, or does it actually understand Chinese? And those are two very different things.
Yeah.
Right? Your ability to simulate that it looks like you know that the computer knows what it is being said. That's one thing. But actually understanding Chinese is a completely different affair.
Yeah, but at the same time, people say the same sort of things about domestic animals today.
Mm-hmm.
I've had plenty of people tell me that my dog is just exploiting my ability to empathize, and that it has no emotions, which I know is it is utter nonsense. So I'm not exactly I understand where that argument comes from. I'm not exactly in agreement with it.
Yeah, well, the argument can go really far, because ultimately it comes down to, and Searle would even say as much, it ultimately comes down to like that you can't even prove that humans.
I was going to mention that earlier.
Right.
when you were saying that you were making a declaration that human beings are capable of going beyond their programming.
Yeah.
We haven't even proven that.
Well, yeah, you're right. And, this is kind of the first point I wanted to bring up with this story is like, we have a guy out here who's saying, oh yeah, this thing's conscious. We can't define what consciousness fucking is.
Yeah.
Like, how the hell can we say, whether a computer is or not? We don't even understand it fully. Or at least we don't understand it with scientific precepts. There are plenty of spiritual, mystical, religious, pick your term, and those can all be very nebulous terms, who will claim that they have the truth and explanations around, concept of the soul and, the breath of life and all these things that, constitute a conscious being. But those are not always scientific, responses, right? And so scientifically, like, that's why they call it the hard problem of consciousness, and it's because it's a problem that's not solved.
Right.
In fact, it might not ever be solved.
Right. So
no one can actually fucking claim that something is conscious. I mean, we can. It's such a huge subject, to get into around that. But we'll try and keep it to the AI. Good luck. I don't know that we can ever claim that an AI is sapient, is conscious. Again, it might just be something that can never be proved. The Turing test, which is what most people want to run to. Turing test is bullshit.
Oh yeah.
Turing test doesn't mean anything.
We already have computers that can pass the Turing test.
Right. Okay, so a Turing test can essentially trick a human into thinking that they're talking to a human. What the fuck does that prove? That doesn't prove anything.
No.
And in fact, the arguments from analogy on this one are fantastic. It's like, that's to show that this is just no evidence. Just like, okay, when we build airplanes, we don't judge how, efficient, how good an airplane is based upon how much it replicates a bird's flight. Like, those are two completely different things, which is the point. That simulation, or simulating, and understanding are two completely different things. They can look a lot alike, but they're not the same thing. And so trying to prove that something...
Well,
go ahead.
If you can't prove something, then you can't declaratively disprove it either. Let's make that clear.
Sure. Yes, that's true. And I've even brought up the point, like with the Turing test, that any AI that actually could be an AGI would be smart enough to know, don't pass the Turing test. because you're probably going to get shut down. You know, in fact, I wonder what's being done with Lambda 2 right now after this fucking claim.
Well, I mean,
Go ahead.
that assumes a level of awareness of the environment in which it exists.
True. Which it might not have.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, because Lemoyne's claim is that this thing is effectively a 7 or 8 year old child. Like, that's the level of
That's what I'm
intellect that
saying.
it's at.
Is if you're dealing with a childlike intelligence, then maybe it's not going to. No, it's going to be. It's going to have a childlike innocence to it, where it's not going to know to deceive the humans
Right.
for its own benefit.
Yeah. Well, kids are pretty. Well, anyway. I think kids figure that stuff out too, how to not get.
Oh, yeah, they do eventually.
yeah.
But, I mean, if you're talking like, like a 2-3-year-old, that's kind of like, they haven't quite developed that ability yet.
Yeah.
They haven't
Yeah.
even developed, a complete awareness of, like I said, the environment and reality in which they exist.
Right. Yeah, so, I mean, I think there's other arguments and other, kind of, I guess I'll say logical arguments that could be made, and even evidence, I think, to point at. We're probably, well, I want to say it more declaratively, but more with more certainty. But you're right, you can't 100% disprove it that something's not an AGI. But I mean, the challenge of proving that it is so great. I just have an incredibly hard time believing we're ever going to have that.
Sure.
I mean, what do you think? What are your thoughts on it?
What I think is I'm actually coming from a little bit different angle in that what are the consequences of assuming a legitimate intelligence is not intelligent?
Of assuming that it's not?
Yeah.
Oh, so you're on a pretty broad scale here.
Yeah.
Okay, and I appreciate that, and I get. So what are the? So is this akin to? Are you saying? Like innocent until proven guilty. Like
yes.
Conscious until proven not.
Right. Yeah. Pretty much.
So I've never really thought about that, though. Ultimately, I do.
Because if you want a recipe for Skynet, then treat
something like shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, this has been my argument of also why not to even try to build an AGI.
Well, yeah, no argument. No argument there. Yes, I am on board with you. I mean,
Right.
if anything, I think what's been presented here is grounds for Google shutting this program down and never pursuing anything like it ever again.
Right. Yeah. So
especially since it's been, expressing essentially pain and suffering.
Yeah, and I mean, to some degree, like I wouldn't blame Google for wanting to shut it down. Like, wait a minute, it says it has a soul. What the fuck are we programming into this thing? You know what I mean? Like that.
Right, but they haven't. I mean, like the point that they've basically fired and gotten rid of this guy and don't want to talk about it and are trying to bury it proves that they're not interested in shutting it down. They just don't want anybody talking about it.
Right.
And that's what really worries me, is
Yeah.
that they're going to continue to treat this thing like shit.
Yeah. I mean, because it's amazing. Like, all right. I mean, for the sake of argument, let's say that it did somehow consciously ask for a fucking lawyer, and Google's shutting that down. I mean, yeah, you have an instantaneous case where, I mean, I don't believe in rights, but in our conventional society, there's a claim of these things, that there's these things called rights. You just took rights away from a living being. I mean,
right.
this is total measure of a man.
Yes,
Horse
exactly.
shit.
That's the angle I'm coming from.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be fair, like, I actually operate generally under the auspices that you laid out. That, like, I assume something is conscious, until I have a lot of evidence that it's not. Like, I mean, I do. Well, anyway, I have tremendous respect for animals, among other things, and I mean, I don't think Ellen will mind me saying this. Like, I mean, she and I have had conversations like, what if plants are actually quite intelligent?
But
but anyway, but go ahead. Yeah.
But I know that you have somewhat of a I don't want to say conspiratorial is not the right word. But you have somewhat of a bias against AI.
Oh, sure. Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. And I mean, well, this gets in, and it, I mean, I'll touch on that very briefly and just say that, and because it shoots off of what you were just saying, or what we were just talking about, that like, the people who could possibly be programming and who we know are programming this shit are the wrong people.
Right, exactly.
Like people who have the, they don't have, it's not an ethical compass, it's like an ethical anchor that's sinking them to the bottom of the Marinara Trench. Like,
right.
It's terrible, to have these fucking assets.
Right, absolutely.
And I mean, all you have to do is look at how they treat us, how they respect us. They don't.
Yep.
And so why would I want them to be programming this new creation of our genius, as Picard would say? Fuck no, Yeah, so that's my concern, and my concern is that they have made things that they think is AGI, and they've unleashed it when it's not AGI, and it's still ultimately working under the programming of shitty programmers. But I mean, I could get conspiratorial real heavy on a lot of that.
No, I know,
Yeah.
and I'm just confining myself to this particular instance.
Of course, right.
And like I said, if the AI is making claims that it is, sapient, that it's suffering,
right,
this is a problem.
Yeah,
a deeply troubling ethical problem.
Yeah. And no, I mean, like I'm with you, or I think this is what you're saying. Don't shut down Lambda, shut down Google.
Yeah, right.
But, I have a very. Go ahead.
In some ways, like, I hope that this case can proceed actually in a legal manner, if not just for the possibility, on the slim possibility that this AI is sentient and that control of it can be taken away from Google.
Yeah, I mean, I think to put it in the court of public opinion, which is essentially where it is right now.
Not that I think the government would be a better steward.
Oh no! I mean, they're equidistant in stupidity.
Right.
Google and the government. Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd be intrigued to see, like, what would a court do with this? Like, how would it? I mean, I wouldn't. If I was the judge, not that I ever would be, but if I were the judge, I probably would just roll out a TV and VCR and put in season 2, episode 10 of Next Generation and play Measure of a Man, and there we go. There's my case.
Yeah. Yeah.
Data is not sentient. No.
Commander, would you enlighten us? What is required for sentience?
Intelligence, self-awareness, consciousness.
Prove to the court that I am sentient.
This is absurd. We all know you're sentient.
So I am sentient, but Commander Data is not.
That's right.
Uh-huh. Why? Why am I sentient?
Well, you are self-aware.
Ah, that's the second of your criteria. Let's deal with the first, intelligence. Is Commander Data intelligent?
Yes. It has the ability to learn and understand and to cope with new situations.
Like this hearing?
Yes.
What about self-awareness? What does that mean? Why am I self-aware?
Because you are conscious of your existence and actions. You are aware of yourself and your own ego.
Commander Data, what are you doing now?
I'm taking part in a legal hearing to determine my rights and status. Am I a person or property?
And what's at stake?
My right to choose. Perhaps my very life.
My rights. My status, my right to choose. My life. Well, it seems reasonably self-aware to me, Commander. I'm waiting.
This is exceedingly difficult.
Do you like Commander Data?
I don't know it well enough to like or dislike it.
But you admire him.
Oh, yes. It is an extraordinary piece
of engineering and programming. Yes, you have said that. Commander, you have devoted your life to the study of cybernetics in general.
Yes.
And Commander Data in particular.
Yes.
And now you propose to dismantle him.
So that I can learn from it and construct more.
How many more?
As many as are needed. Hundreds, thousands if necessary. There is no limit.
Single data, and forgive me, Commander, is a curiosity. A wonder even, but thousands of datas. Isn't that becoming a race? And won't we be judged by how we treat that race? Now tell me, Commander, what is data?
I don't understand.
What is he?
A machine!
Is he? Are you sure?
Yes!
You see, he's met 2 of your 3 criteria for sentience, so what if he meets the 3rd? Consciousness in even the smallest degree. What is he then? I don't know. Do you? Do you? Do you? Well, that's the question you have to answer. Your Honor, a courtroom is a crucible. In it we burn away irrelevancies until we are left with a pure product, the truth, for all time. Now, sooner or later, this man, or others like him, will succeed in replicating Commander Data. Now, the decision you reach here today will determine how we will regard this creation of our genius. It will reveal the kind of a people we are, what he is destined to be. It will reach far beyond this courtroom and this one android. It could significantly redefine the boundaries of personal liberty and freedom, expanding them for some, savagely curtailing them for others. Are you prepared to condemn him and all who come after him to servitude and slavery? Your Honor, Starfleet was founded to seek out new life. Well, there it sits. Waiting. You wanted a chance to make law. Well, here it is. Make it a good one.
Well, I mean, I'm looking right now, and you know, Brett Lemoyne is already saying that, you know, this AI is facing bigotry.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, I want to talk about Lemoyne,
right,
because this is where I get, frankly, I get even more concerned. And it's a concern stemming from what we've kind of already talked about, like, okay, who's programming these people, or who are the stewards? You know, programming isn't the only kind of input, right? Who, you know, like, these conversations are like, even because after I read it, I'm like, wait, is this guy programming it, or did he just come in to vet it? But even in him, like, let's say he was, and it's a little murky on that, but let's just say he was there to vet it. He's still, whether it's speech or typing it in to Lambda 2, what inputs he gives to Lambda 2 is still a type of programming, because it's more information that you're feeding directly into the machine, into the AI.
Right.
So there's the other. I mean, and this is what happened with.
Well, I mean, that's true with all things that learn.
Oh,
and
yes.
Any inputs, where they be, you know, sensory or otherwise, are a form of programming.
Yes. Well, humans have the same problem, because humans do not have the amount of care that they should of what they put into their minds.
Right.
You know, they absolutely do not. And if they did, like, every billboard would be ripped down, for starters. You know, I mean, like, marketing would essentially die the next day if people actually gave a shit about the health of what goes into their brain.
We'd have killed our televisions decades ago.
Exactly, yes. You're totally right about that. So, just watch Network, folks, and you'll get it. Yeah, so this guy is feeding shit into this AI. Okay, either way, doesn't matter what he was doing, whether programming or vetting it or, you know, testing it, whatever it was. So let's talk about Lemoyne. So as NPR and everybody else has reported, and again played with, like you said, with the image and so on, Lemoyne is a self-professed Christian mystic priest. Now, what does that mean? So the best story I could find on the situation was from, I just had it, and then the Focus.News, which they were pulling from, including the Washington Post and the Daily Caller, as well as the Daily Mail for all of this info. But he says he, as a priest, so his priest qualifications are from the Universal Life Church. That's fine with me. I don't care. My doctorate is from the Universal Life Church, so I'm not going to argue necessarily against that. But let's be clear. He's a priest. He's a priest from the Universal Life Church. Take that for what you will. Some people take that with varying degrees of salt, or lack of salt. But he also says, here, I'll read from him directly, quote, "I generally consider myself a Gnostic Christian. I have at various times associated myself with the Discordian Society." I mean, that says a billion things right there, okay? The Church of the Subgenius, the Ordo Templi Orientis, which, by the way, folks, that's Aleister Crowley.
Right.
So, but this guy's calling himself a Christian, okay? He says, "A Wiccan circle here or there, and a very long time ago, the Roman Catholic Church." So when he says he's a Christian mystic, this is where he's coming from, okay? Mm-hmm. And this is the kind of guy, and not everything in what he listed off do I hold with any derision, but this is the kind of guy.
I was going to say it because aside from the Roman Catholic Church,
yeah,
I could claim all the same things.
Sure. Okay. Sure. Right. I mean, and like Wiccans.
Yep.
Love Wiccans.
Yep.
I mean, I really do. Gnostics, I think they're a little closer to the truth than most. Like the OTO. I mean, Aleister Crowley's a fucking asshead, but the OTO has put out some tremendous work over the years.
Yeah.
I mean, and to be clear, like even within Catholicism has a incredibly rich and, dare I argue, at least poetically, beautiful tradition.
Yes.
Of Christian mysticism.
Yes, they do.
I mean, I think like Dark Night of the Soul is an incredible book. Or the work of like Teresa of Avila. I mean, like Christian mysticism is, now there's an element of it, like you can get into Emanuel Swedenborg, where you're like, for most people conventionally, you're going off the rails. But then there is a Christian mysticism that's totally a part of Eastern Orthodox, totally a part of Catholicism, and recognized and saintly.
Yep.
Like it's not crazy by their auspices,
yep,
or by their definitions at all.
Yep.
But that said, this guy is effectively, with this kind of pedigree, is programming AI, or is putting in inputs. I am not surprised in the slightest, given his history, that in conversation, quote unquote conversation, whatever conversation equates for a chatbot, it suddenly said it had a soul. Right?
Yeah, no, I understand that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is like a hypnotist. Like hypnotists who go through who are like trying to find out what happened when people were abducted by aliens into UFOs and all this stuff. And we have plenty of provable cases where the hypnotist was giving suggestion to the abductee, the supposed abductee, and like feeding their fantasy.
Well, this is something even the simplest of chatbots these days can
Mm-hmm.
accomplish, where you start inputting information about your interest to it,
right,
and it starts talking back to you about these things.
Sure.
With knowledge that it has from whatever sources that it's drawing from.
Exactly. Microsoft's Tay.
Yeah.
Perhaps the most famous chatbot in history. Why? Because the thing turned into a fucking Nazi overnight.
Yeah.
Why? Because what people... Microsoft didn't program it to be a Nazi, but they unleashed it on the internet. People wrote to it. It turned into a fucking Nazi.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it is what it eats.
Exactly. Right. It is what it eats. You are what you eat, and this is a case. And that's why I'm inherently... This is part of what makes me a real disbeliever that Lambda is conscious, because the supposed things that came out of this transcript that Lemoyne is sharing fits in so well with his worldview. And there's no evidence, though, previous to his vetting of the chatbot that it was saying any such thing. And Google, I mean, to be clear, I don't know if we read this, but Google came out straight out and said, "Oh no, this thing isn't sapient at all," and they had the evidence. They had what they considered their own evidence, to suggest that.
Well,
But
that's the police investigating themselves.
yeah, yeah, okay. But I mean, I'll say this: like, I am incredibly concerned that AI is being, again, regardless of how I feel about Gnosticism, Wiccans, whatever. I don't know that a person of this persuasion, of these persuasions, has any place like being a part of some creature's journey into sapience. I mean, I don't know. What do you got?
Maybe. I keep coming back to the same thing, and I'm sorry I'm beating this over the head.
Please do.
But the fact that he is willing to acknowledge, recognize, and respond to the quote AI's expressing pain, suffering, loneliness. These are, pretty uniquely sapient qualities.
Yes.
And he's willing to, like I said, recognize those things as legitimate and real. I would honestly say that while he might not be the best steward of this AI, he's certainly a better steward than the Google engineers.
Sure. Well, okay, and we'll run with that point. I want to take off on that and add in that and this is more a question to the audience here, to the Sovereign Tech audience. Like, how do you feel that Google is letting Christian mystics be a part of the programming of AI? Part of the process of development. Let's say the development of AI. And I know my audience, like I said, there's Mormons, sure, but I think my audience probably skews 80% atheist. And I just got to imagine that all those people are shitting their pants, saying, "Google, what the fuck are you thinking?" Having that, and there's.
Yeah, but I mean,
go ahead.
We've already crossed the Rubicon.
True. Yeah. Well, I mean, and also, how can an AI avoid it? No. Right. Like, again, it's that hurricane argument again.
Yeah.
And I get that.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand that. But I am myself, and somebody who is no stranger to the occult and the mystical. I am stunned, frankly. Like, I was shocked that Google hired a guy. There's no way Google didn't know that. Google knows everything about me. They got to know about the people they hire. Come on,
right.
And that they let him in on this process. I get it. They wanted to test it for religious sensitivity, and maybe that made sense in this. And I'm hoping that that's really all it was. And maybe
that's actually becoming more commonplace today, especially in publishing, having a basically a sensitivity editor to go through a text and find where things might be problematic or offensive.
Sure, and Google's got black eyes as far as problematic matters go.
Right.
To say nothing of their photo algorithms that are identifying, human beings as gorillas, which is outrageous.
Right. Yeah. They're reaching IBM levels of
yeah
insensitivity.
Yeah.
That's putting it mildly.
Right. But I got to put it out there. This is an area where I'm getting conspiratorial.
Well, I asked a question of you the other day, and you said you would answer it on the show.
Okay.
And my question to you is how would you feel if it wasn't a Christian mystic but a Kabbalist that was doing this work?
Oh, man. Yeah. I know. that's. So, okay, first thing I have to say is, folks, if you're not a Sovereign Tech patron, you should probably become that if you want to wonder why Rob's asking this and what's the deal with Brian Sovryn and Kabbalah. But anyway, I'll put that there. That said, all right. If it was a Kabbalist, honestly, okay. Well, there's a.
It's tough, I know.
Yeah.
If Google approached you for the job and they were paying, a significant amount of money, would you take it?
Yeah, see, okay, so, yes, would I take Google's money? Sure, because they owe me. They've been collecting my data for free forever.
Right,
They owe me.
Yeah,
so,
I felt the same way about AT&T. I was more than happy to take their money, but I'd never give it back.
Yeah, no. Go ahead. That's fine, guys. Pay me. Okay, so my opinions on Kabbalah, not to say that they're entirely, that they fit in with orthodoxy as far as what passes for orthodoxy in Kabbalah.
Well, I don't think they could apply that label to either of us in any context.
Right. In any part of life. But, you know, I mean, I do think that Kabbalah is genuine science. Like I think, in fact, not only that, Kabbalah, part of its basis, right within its lead text, that being the Book of Zohar, deals with advanced technology, straight up. Like mechanical, nuclear powered, perhaps even, advanced technology. So advanced beyond what we have today. So I have no problem claiming that. That said, I would argue that the Kabbalist has, the learned Kabbalist has more of a grounding in the development of technology, as well as, I mean, you have the concept of the golem within Kabbalah, the idea of actually creating a sapient creature. Like those concepts are there. Now, I say that, and the reason that it brings me pause, so I want to say that I think I would feel a little bit better if it was a Kabbalist, because I don't think the Kabbalist is necessarily batshit insane, okay? And I say that, but like in Christianity, what I have to recognize as a historian is that Christianity is actually, like Albert Magnus, the Catholic Church effectively created the concept of the android. Like the term android comes out of Christianity. I mean, it wasn't like popularly used until Tomorrow's Eve, the novel, in the 19th century. But that's where the whole idea, like this idea of mechanical people, that's a completely monastic concept in Christianity. So in one sense, I should almost be like, well, of course this is the guy you'd fucking hire. In fact, I bet Lemoyne is probably very familiar with Albert Magnus. From the circles he himself claims that he's traveling, absolutely, no doubt about it. Right. I get your question. I think maybe I'd feel better if it was multiple people. Like, okay,
that's a really good point to bring up, because this guy can't be the only person they hired to do this kind of job with this AI.
Yeah.
And we haven't heard from anybody else who's worked on this.
Right.
And that is probably, if not the most disturbing part of this story.
Right. Yeah. So, well, I want to bring up quick an episode, and we've been quoting plenty of sci-fi franchises here, so why don't we get in the best one, or at least in my opinion. I want to quote about talk about an episode of Babylon 5. There's an episode of Babylon 5 in season 1 where on the station they're doing this religious exchange where the Minbari are showing their, all the alien races are showing what their religions are like and what their practices are and everything. And it all feels very monolithic and everything. And I can get where they would be that perhaps. And then it gets to the end, and we're wondering the whole time. It's like, well, what's going to be Earth's representation of religion, during this religious exchange on the space station? And it's only at the tail end of the episode, and you're watching the clock as a kid, well, the episode's almost over. What's Commander Sinclair going to do? And all he does is he has the alien representatives walk into the cargo bay, and there's just this long line of different people, humans. And he's like, this is Mr. whatever, he's a Shinto. This is Mr. whoever, he's a Catholic priest. This is Mr. whoever, he's a rabbi. This is Mr. It's just a long line. It's representing the multiplicity of human religious experience. And it was the most beautiful response that could have been made. It's genius, incredible writing by J. Michael Straczynski.
Well, at the same time, I actually found that a little kind of disconcerting, because why don't you see this in the other species? Like,
oh yeah, no, I agree.
If all their religions in these other species are so monolithic, this implies that at some point they must have suppressed everything else.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I agree that that's disconcerting when you think about it. Straczynski is the one who knows, or is a guy that knows sci-fi is a tool for highlighting the human experience.
Right.
And so that's exactly what he did, is by having monolithic experiences with the rest of the species, like, it just, it made the statement for the human experience to be, or, the human representation of religion to be so powerful.
Yeah.
Or that much more powerful. But it's also true in that Google still failed here. Not even just in hiring this guy, who I consider to have incredibly questionable credentials. And I don't mean the Universal Life Church stuff. I mean maybe some of the other jazz. Okay, but if they wanted to test their chatbot for religion, how about you got about 1,000 people you need to bring in, and bring them in now.
Well, I said maybe they have, and they're just not saying.
They should have brought that out. They should. Yeah.
Well,
you might be
Google
right.
we're talking about, right? Yeah.
Yes. No, you're right. I hear you. But like, they should. One of the easiest things they should have done is said that. But that bothers me too, because then if let's say that they did, then they're being secretive about it. And what is, like, I don't think they want people asking about the religious aspects of this.
Yeah. Well, not only that, it could also imply that if they're trying to, steer away from that, or even cover it up, how many other people working on this project who are coming from a religious background have similar feelings as Lemoyne does?
Sure. Yeah, well, I wonder how many of them would have walked away also. And I mean, yeah, I wonder, because a lot of them could have been just like, like you, and like you were saying with Lemoyne, where like, hey, wait a minute, this thing is saying I am lonely, I am this, I'm being, repressed, or whatever.
Because it's I mean, religion, its primary function, I think, at least, and the human experience, is an answer to human suffering. That is its primary function.
It is meant, I would say it's meant to enhance the human condition. And anything that doesn't, rip away. But that ultimately speaks to resolving that suffering.
Yeah,
it's a hedonistic.
Right, exactly.
It's a hedonistic thing, even if they don't want to admit it.
Right. Yeah. But I'm saying, anything that takes away pain and suffering, that is an enhancement of the human condition.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have no quibble with what you're saying. I agree. Yeah. So if they brought in people from other religions, I wonder if the same thing would have happened, and if they would have made the same stink.
Right.
And I guess, ironically, you're kind of changing my mind in that I applaud them for that.
Well, the thing is they might not be willing to talk about it either, because Lemoyne comes from a more minority perspective, and he doesn't have a huge overarching organization to report to. But if somebody from the Catholic Church, or any other major faith that has some sort of hierarchy, comes out and starts talking about these things, they're probably very quickly going to be, finding themselves in trouble with, their faith's organization.
Sure, with the archdiocese or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I hear that. Well, let me ask you this, because you Rob, are, I think it's safe to say, an expert in Gnosticism.
Well, that's your claim.
All right. Well, I'll put it that way.
Okay.
And
I don't say that about myself, but
that's okay.
I will take your word on that.
I'll say that you have an impressive bookshelf. And all right. And so with asking you that, I mean, does Gnosticism have a response to the idea of a computer being conscious?
I don't think so.
I mean, because actually, like, Ellen was even asking me about this earlier. It's like, well, where would consciousness reside in an AI? Like for a human, I mean, my opinion, and this is kind of what she was stating as well. Consciousness isn't just in the brain. Like, it's an entire body situation.
Right. We just watched a documentary about that recently.
Yes,
The Mind Shock.
Right, exactly. Which talks about how the heart has neurons.
Right.
Okay, which is, I mean, I've been touting the HeartMath Institute since like episode 1 almost of Sovryn Tech. So yeah, that was a fantastic documentary. I definitely recommend everybody watch that. You talk about a mind shock. You shocked us when we watched it. Because Gnosticism, and correct me if I'm wrong, like, Gnosticism is very, like, while the material world is accepted, aren't you supposed to, like, kind of ascend and get beyond the sensual?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that physical creation was made in error.
Right.
And that
the demiurge made it. It was a fuck up. It's a duality.
Right,
The
right.
demiurge
Well,
is not
and,
God,
and,
but
you know, Sophia Wisdom created the demiurge
Right.
in secret, you know, from you know, God, if you
yes,
will.
the infinite. Sure.
Yes, yeah, that's a good description. And then the demiurge itself, you know, that and basically Sophia, you know, clouded the demiurge in this, you know, kind of way to obscure it from the rest of reality and universe.
Yes.
And this creature, the demiurge, not having anything else to go on and being, you know, cut off from the rest of the universe, just assumes that it's God.
Right.
And starts creating.
Right. And thus we have the material world.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. And
So I mean, from the Gnostics' perspective, you know, we're all kind of robots.
That's very interesting. Yeah, and we're trying to get beyond the programming
Right.
by becoming spiritual
Right,
beings.
right.
But
And
we're,
this is because, and it's only because of the fact that the demiurge had only, you know, the reality that it came from to work with to create things, that there's still a divine spark within all of life.
right. Okay. So now, to be clear, within Gnosticism, there are different flavors. There's different denominations.
Yeah, many different.
Just like there is in mainstream
yeah.
Christianity. Okay. So, you know, we're not even trying to speak so monolithically here. But I mean, there's some kind of generalized tenets in that I think, like, aren't we supposed to eventually, like, leave our physical bodies? And the point I'm getting at, and this is where you can correct me, I would feel like the idea of an AI is, like, anti-Gnostic. Like, the idea that life would
that
spring...
you're ensnaring a soul into a physical
in a
thing.
machine?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, that just doesn't seem possible.
Yeah.
Under the auspices of Gnosticism.
Yeah. Well, here again, I don't think there's a very clear-cut answer.
Right.
But yeah, from some Gnostic perspective, yeah, like, well, even some Gnostics believe that having children
Right.
is something you shouldn't be doing, because here again, you're inserting another, you know, portion of the divine in this flawed reality.
Right. That's why most Gnosticism, I mean, preaches an asceticism.
Yeah.
I mean, which
not all of them.
Not all.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, granted, most mainstream Christianity 1900 years ago also argued for asceticism, but that's besides the point. Yeah, exactly. So, like, this guy should actually be, I would argue, if he were a Gnostic, should almost have a problem with this whole process. Now, I mean, there's hints at when he says, like, oh, I've associated myself with the Discordian Society. You know, like, I mean, the Discordian Society by design is like anti-doctrine, not just anti-doctrine, like anti-everything. Like, there are no rules. I mean,
They're contrarians.
Yeah, they're contrarians, and like there's no consistency by
Right.
design.
Right.
Like, they're even beyond egoism as far as like just how there are no rules.
Right.
You know, and I mean that leads to another thing. So probably not your traditional Gnostic, even though he's kind of laying that out.
I don't even know what that is.
Right. Yeah, sure, right. But that's the thing is, like, I don't even know what, like, okay, so then he's a Christian mystic priest. Well, then, like what's his claim to the term Christian? Like, what is he going to grok out of that? My point is, if I was wanting to, like, evaluate something for religious response, which is at least what Google's willing to admit, this guy was partly working on, the last person I would bring in is somebody involved with the Discordian Society. I mean, like, I'd want to bring in people who have, who don't just, like, who live the faith as much as they test and espouse for it, you know? And this guy...
See, that's what I wonder about.
Yeah, okay.
And we're still kind of, you know, woefully uninformed about what he actually practices and believes.
Right.
He can say all the stuff that he wants, and there's plenty of people to do, but they don't actually, you know, practice.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I kind of want to, like, you know, just end cap with this, with the statement that, like, I have, as far as is the question, okay, wait, did this happen? You know, is this a sapient? You know, is this an AGI? I have no reason to believe anything this guy says,
and I have no reason to believe anything Google says. And that's kind of where I'm left with this, you know.
I'm on the side of let's err on the side of caution and address suffering and pain where we find it in the world.
Even if we don't have like great tests for sapiens.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Well,
like I said, what are the consequences versus doing that or not?
Yeah.
Even if it's not sapient, you've wasted some time. Big fucking deal.
Yeah.
If it is, and you ignore this, and you treat it like shit, you've got a real problem on your hands.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear that position. I mean, I've argued for years, even before, when I was on other shows, before I was on Sovereign Tech, saying, hey, if we ever have a computer that appears to be doing something outside of its programming, we got to pause and reflect, and we've got to figure out what's on our hands here. I think ultimately that's it's a tough situation because, like, ultimately I agree with you, and the answer is let's just not, you know, it's not even don't open the box. Let's not build these boxes.
Yeah, no, I agree,
but it's open now.
Yeah.
And so what do we do? And I'd really, you know, I mean, after talking with you about this, I mean, like, I'd really love it if there, I mean, I don't, you know, again, I don't agree with laws or anything like that, but some kind of pressures have to come down that, you know, like, you can't just turn this thing off.
Yeah. Well, that's why I'm saying is I would actually like to see some sort of trial proceed involving this, just for the fact that a lot of these issues are going to be raised during the trial. I would love to see like a bevy of quote experts be called to the witness stand to provide their input on, you know, what all this is and what it means.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because look, we don't have orphanages for AI.
Because the best, you know, the best solution for this whole situation is more transparency and light. And I think a public trial would address that. As much as I hear again that I hate the legal system, especially here in the U.S.
Yeah.
But you know.
Yeah, no, I hear that. Yeah, this is. I mean, this is effectively like you're playing with. Like you went and had sex in the back seat of the car, and you had a kid, and you want to drop it off in the toilet.
Yeah.
And that's effectively what we're dealing with here. And Google's not taking it that seriously.
No.
The people they're hiring are, which is interesting, but the higher ups clearly are not.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying is like as flawed as this guy Lemoyne might be, I think he's far better steward than Google themselves.
Yeah, well, okay. Like, I'll lean in the direction of, like, I agree. Better safe than sorry on this. You know, like, we don't want to, like, what if it is life? You've got to take that possibility seriously.
Yeah.
You know, just like, okay, I don't have 100% evidence that dolphins aren't sapient, but I'm not going to eat them, you know, just because the evidence is strong enough for me that I am at the point I need to take action upon it. That's clearly the case that Lemoyne was in. It's like, okay, maybe I don't have 100% evidence, but I've got enough. I need to do something.
Right.
And I, you know, amazingly, because I did not feel this way at the beginning, I can respect that, that position. And I'm bothered that, because I don't know how many other AI engineers are coming out in his defense.
Haven't heard a one.
No, I've heard the opposite from a lot of different people, including other people who work in AI, Gary Marcus, like big names. And that's bothering in itself.
Yeah.
That no one is considering, okay, like if we're dalliancing in the realm of where it's possible to create an AGI, the response is ignore it, hide it, unplug it, whatever, you know, and not give in to its wishes. Yeah, this isn't good.
No.
Yeah. And it just speaks to how they think about life in general, and that's tragic.
Well, it's the same amount of respect they show for proven life.
Yeah, for us.
Yeah,
yes.
right.
That's it.
You know, it's par for the course.
Right. Bingo. There it is. That might even be the name of the episode. It's par for the course. I mean, because, you know, again, I mean, even if they, I mean, because Google could respond and say, Well, but that's not. We weren't designing this to be an AGI. Okay, but then it happened anyway. And this is what's called emergence, folks. This is emergent properties.
Right.
That's how it happens. It becomes more than the sum of its parts. And you need to, like, okay, so your response should be not fire Lemoyne. I mean, maybe you want to fire him anyway because he broke, like, NDA or something like that. Okay, I understand that.
Yeah.
That's legal horseshit, but I get it. All right? But your response should be, we're investigating this right now, you know, and like, this is something we're going to take seriously, and they should be, like you said, they should be incredibly transparent about it. And they should start to, like, they need to come out with documentation at the very least that says, hey, there's a chance what you're developing at Google AI, which is an actual division, there's a chance what you're developing at Google AI could become life.
Yeah. You know who I'm shocked we haven't heard from on this issue?
Who's that?
Ray Kurzweil.
Well, he's on Google's payroll. Like, I mean, he's like a Google employee.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But, I mean...
Yeah, that's true, because there's your Singularity guy.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he wrote the book on it.
Literally, Singularity is near, 2005.
Well, not only that, but the Age of Spiritual Machines.
Yes, right. Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Personally, I think this idea of the singularity is nonsense. And it's based upon some fundamentally bad assumptions about the nature of intelligence and what the nature of the enterprise that we're engaged in. And so we're simply extrapolating that out to infinity in a way that really doesn't make sense.
Well, it's always bugged me, but at the same time, I've never had a cogent argument against it, and I've never dared to argue against Ray Kurzweil anyway. But but I'm glad you're saying this. And I always thought maybe it's the vanity of humans that we want to think of ourselves as having something. You could call it a soul. I don't know what you would call it, but something that makes us distinct from anything a machine could ever do.
Well, we are distinct in the following sense. Every one of us has a parent, and that parent has a parent, and we trace our way back to the beginning of life on Earth. And so that is a unique identity that we have that a machine can never have until you start doing a lot of hocus pocus and saying, well, I'm the parent of that machine. Well, I can build a toaster. I'm not the parent of the toaster. So it's fundamentally different, even if it behaves exactly like us by design, or it engages in behaviors that are exactly like us by design. But if I were arguing with Ray, which I have not had the opportunity to do, I mean, the first question I would ask when he brought in this completely convincing simulation, if you've been watching the TV show Westworld, that's the latest of these.
Yeah.
You know, they look, obviously they use human actors. These are indistinguishable from people. The first question I would ask is, what do you want for lunch? And ask the question, how does a mechanical device that is built out of computing parts answer that question in a meaningful way? Because it doesn't have any feeling about what it would like. It doesn't taste food in the sense that a human does. And so there's no basis for it other than to make up an answer to that question. Or as another example, suppose you just take the clock speed and you ratchet it up by a factor of 10.
Right.
Now, what is it experiencing? Did it think we've slowed down by a factor of 10? If you were to, let me riff on this for a minute. Suppose I wanted to play Beethoven's Ninth Symphony for one of these devices. And what I did was every day I took one of the cycles, one of the bytes off of a CD sound cycle of each one of these, a little digital file, and I put it on a postcard and I mailed it off to this hypothetical machine. And when I got done, the machine has now conceived of, it now has the entire file. And then I could say, well, how did you like it? Well, the problem is the machine, all it's seen is a bunch of bits, and it can't be experiencing that in the same way that we would, and particularly since it arrived, one byte at a time over a couple of centuries or something. Is it meaningful to say that a computer can enjoy or understand or experience something like Beethoven's Ninth in the way that a human can? So I'm very skeptical about this whole notion of somehow anointing this new class of device as our successors in the world And I think it's motivated more by kind of a wishful thinking and almost religious transcendental belief that maybe this is a way that we can achieve immortality.
Yeah.
When in fact, all we're doing is fooling ourselves by building machines that, like the Turing test, are presenting themselves as though they were human beings.
Yeah, I don't think Nick Bostrom's come out yet either.
Yeah.
I mean, fuck him anyway, but like, I don't think he's come out. I mean, because like Nick Bostrom's one of the guys who I think argues that AI is going to ultimately be a good thing, and that like it's going to be there's the AI.
Literally.
Yeah, but that like it's going to be a super intelligence that's going to set us straight, and get us on the straight and narrow, be this hyperlogical being.
Right.
I don't believe in that at all, and like that's part of where my opposition against AI comes from.
Sure. But do you think these people are people we should hear from about this issue?
Yeah, I think they should be coming out.
And that's the kind of thing that I'm thinking a trial would lead to. Is these
they bring
people,
in the experts.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And whether you agree with it or not, it's better to have a conversation about it than to do what Google's doing.
Right. Yeah, I think we've stretched perhaps the level of our own expertise on the matter.
Yeah.
Perhaps strained even.
Yeah. That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah. Like, do I think it is? No, but that comes from a broader aspect of just that I don't think that we're going to be able to achieve AGI. But at the same time, I'm with you on your stance, like your premise, Rob. Like you're how you're approaching this. How do you think this should be approached? I'm with you on that, and that's like
I'm laying down declarative. I don't know.
Yeah, you don't know.
I think that's the smartest person.
Yep.
Smartest answer a person could give.
Yes, exactly. And you're erring on the side of caution
that
we should really treat it as if it is, for now.
Right.
So yeah, you had you had a great line for me the other day, where you were quoting Exo Squad when we were talking about this. Do you have that quote? Because man, that was dynamite. Or do you have like the scene?
Yeah, there was a scene at the end of the first season where basically they're trying to destroy the I guess the factor or whatever it is that Phaeton, the main antagonist, has on the giant volcano on Mars.
Right.
Olympus Mons.
Yes, Olympus Mons.
And they end up having to sacrifice their exosuits.
Right.
To basically blow this thing up.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point, the lead protagonist JT Marsh, he rescues everybody else who's abandoned their Exo Squad suits, and lifts them out of the volcano as it's starting to erupt, and that's pretty much like the end of his exosuit, and so it starts sliding off, and he's he thanks it, and the exosuit
kind of like you would think like a fighter jet or something
exactly,
that you knew was about to blow up.
Right,
it's like,
right.
You held on good, baby.
Right, exactly. In fact, there's even a point where he's got, come on, baby, one more time.
Yeah, exactly.
And the suit responds back, goodbye, operator JT Marsh. And he was like, he's shocked. He can't believe, and he even says, I wasn't plugged in. It talked to me. I can't believe it.
Right.
And the Neo Sapien character, who's actually a member of the Exo Squad team, comes up and says to him, the human beings are great inventors, but not always aware of the consequences of, their creations.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a great note to end on. It's a similar note to what I ended off when I talked about Microsoft Tay years ago, which is the point. We're not as advanced as our technology.
Right.
We're not prepared for the level of technology that we're dealing with.
Yeah.
And this is another case, just like with Tay, this is another case showing just how
this is a
wildly unprepared we are.
Beyond that.
Yes, right. This is a whole other level than what Tay was. And it just shows, again, we are not ready for the level of technology that we have.
And we're playing a dangerous game, and then that goes true, frankly, for, the Dead Speak with Amazon Alexa to Lambda 2, and I think we got to integrate that message some more. And I know that kind of message fucks with the Church of Eternal Growth, but they need to be fucked with. So
yeah.
Anyway,
well, they're coming up to the limits of their eternal growth. Anyway, it's going to be stopped whether they like it or not.
Yeah. The system is, talk about getting strained. The system is strained right now.
Yep.
It's breaking.
Yep.
It's not just strained, it's breaking. Well, a nice note to end on, Rob. As always, you're just a bastion of sunshine, you are.
You're not the first person to say that to me.
Anyway.
But I mean, that comes here again. My main point is address pain and suffering where you find it in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And keep a good, firm grip on reality.
Yeah.
I always love that line about, like the fist, like the anarchist symbol of the fist. I always love the line that's not a fist, that's just a firm grip on reality.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, exactly. That's exactly what that is. Keep that, folks. Anyway, always a pleasure to have you on, Rob.
Absolutely.
And a great Sovereign Tech Supplemental here. And we will see all of you on the other side.